Little white lies, little white lies, little white lies, little white lies. Keep on telling me your little white lies.
Sergo, it is September 25th. Welcome to Let's Talk Native on the LTN Radio Network. This program breaks all the rules for Native radio. No buffalo speeches, no mystic healing, and no special Indian prayers. We tackle the real issues facing Native people with a look back at our glorious and our grave history and a look forward to our ongoing battles for sovereignty and autonomy. Let's Talk Native is produced in association with Iroquois Promotions on the LTN Radio Network, streaming live from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation and simulcast on the Gwe, CKWE in Tandanega. You can find us at www.ltnradionet.com, and of course, we are streaming live on Facebook. I am John Kane. I'm your show's host and producer, and I'm joined in studio by Robbie John, good friend, and a guy who likes to join us every once in a while and weigh in on some of the topics, and we got an obvious one to weigh in on today. And, of course, we've also got Jake Proud in studio, who is manning the cameras for our Facebook live stream and for our YouTube video channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. There you can find videos of the programs and the videos we've been shooting now for a couple of weeks. And maybe we'll even talk a little bit about our latest video. Our studio engineer is Kelly McMillan, and I want to thank her for her great work and in putting our setup together. And anytime we have a problem, she's there for us. So I want to thank her as well. Hey, the opening song is Murray Porter with Pappy John's band singing Little White Lies. And I don't know how else to characterize what is transpiring with this Colin Kaepernick protest and how, just some of the rhetoric that's coming out of this stuff. I mean, because there's some clear, blatant lies, not just little white lies, but lies told by white people. I guess that makes them white lies, I guess. So I'm going to talk about it. But before that, first, I got to do first things first. Today is my grandson's birthday, so I got to wish Gavin Jimerson a happy 14th birthday. A kid I'm, just amazingly proud of, and he's my oldest grandson. So he's the grandchild that I've got to spend so much time over the last 14 years with, and have held him since he was a baby, and now get mauled by him on a basketball court. Kid's over 6 foot tall, and is certainly more than I can handle for the most part. But again, I got to wish my grandson Gavin a happy birthday. It's also Matt's wife's birthday, so Matt's not in with us in studio today. I don't know if he too much festivities for Steph, but again, happy birthday to Steph Halftown. All right, let me get into it. There is. Unless you live under a rock someplace, you know what the circumstance is. You know that you've got a guy in Colin Kaepernick who last year, not this year, last year, began a very quiet and respectful and very small protest. He wasn't waving flags around. He wasn't carrying banners. He wasn't burning flags or he wasn't saying a word, really. At first he just sat. And when did he sit? He sat during the national anthem. Started in the preseason games last year, actually. So he basically just sat out the national anthem. And then he was asked about it. And he said, look, as long as I'm seeing black men shot by police, unarmed black men shot by police, and there's rarely an indictment, never a prosecution. In fact, these guys are getting paid leave even while these things are being investigated. I mean, we're talking about not just black men, but black children. Tamir Rice being killed. A 13-year-old kid shot in Cleveland. He was playing with an airsoft gun. Cops show up, and not only did they shoot him, but they deny him any kind of medical treatment. Once they realized they just shot a kid, it took 45 minutes before an ambulance showed up. Nobody charged. And, of course, whether you're talking about Eric Garner or, it doesn't matter who you talk about. I mean, the woman in, what was it, Sandra Bland down in Texas, whether you're talking about, the St. Louis or Ferguson or, Cleveland, or it doesn't matter where you're talking about. There is time after time after time. Freddie Gray. People being killed by police officers and no trouble. In fact, the guy who actually choked and not pulled the trigger, not bounced the guy in the back of a van where they didn't have to watch him, but the guy who actually choked the life out of Eric Gardner got raises since then. He's gotten raises since then. And that was New York State, NYPD down in Staten Island. And what did he choke him for? Ironically, this is the kind of the connection between Native people in that circumstance. He was actually accused of selling tax-free cigarettes, Lucy's as they call them. Something that is done so prevalently, it's so commonplace in New York City anyway. But this cop, thought it warranted choking him to death. I mean, choked the life out of him, man. No charges. You know who the only guy who got charged out of that whole incident, Robbie? The guy who shot the video. Yeah, the guy who shot the video. Turn your mic a little bit more towards you. Yeah, just go ahead and twist it. There you go. Yeah, the guy who shot the video is the only guy who they trumped up some weapons charges and they locked him up. But so the only guy who got in trouble out of the whole Eric Gardner thing was the guy who shot the video, the cell phone video. I mean, so this is what Colin Kaepernick was protesting. He says, "Look, I can't pay homage to a national anthem that says, land of the free, when there isn't the land of the free. Liberty and justice for all, part of that Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. No, I'm sorry, there isn't." And so he wasn't protesting the military, and he wasn't protesting even the flag or protesting the anthem itself. What he was protesting was the fact that that's not the reality. I mean, here's what I wrote, just so I don't know. This was my thought, and I'll share it with you. This is a post that I put on Facebook. I said Colin Kaepernick's protest was during the anthem, not against it. He was not protesting the idea of the land of the free, but the fact that it isn't. No one condemns liberty and justice for all. They condemn the fact that there isn't. This isn't about troops and flags. It's about wanting the country to do better, to be better. And all those condemning these guys are okay with police killings and a biased justice system, and choose to deflect the issue into a patriotism fight. That's a post that I put up, and it was widely shared, and I encourage people to continue to share, because that's the truth of the matter. And in fact, there's been veteran after veteran after veteran after veteran who's come in and weighed in on this thing and said, and I'll tell you flat out right out of the gate, I'm not one of those guys who thinks that a guy who slips on a uniform and carries a rifle and goes shoots people in Afghanistan is defending my right to free speech. Yeah, look, there's a 1,000 reasons for somebody to enlist in the armed forces. I mean, maybe 2,000 reasons. None of them has anything to do with defending the Constitution of the United States. It really doesn't. I mean, it's about the United States having, global domination, trying to perhaps police the world, which sounds like a good thing, except for it isn't. It certainly isn't to maintain peace, because if that's the reason for the U.S. military and being so much larger than everybody else's and to be the world's only superpower, then they suck at it, because there's no peace in the world, folks. This is about global domination and U.S. national interest. And you know what those U.S. national interests are?
Money, power, and politics.
Money more than anything, because money's, but that's exactly right. Money. So when they talk about national interest, it's about trade. It's about oil, access to markets. And that's what it's all about. So look, I'm not condemning somebody for joining the military. But, for all those people who say, oh, yeah, the military defends your right for free speech. No, they don't. No, they did. Look, and as far as the military defending a black man, the closest thing to the U.S. military ever defending a black man was the Union fighting the South over slavery. And you know what? That may not have been totally just about slavery either. I mean, it was, but it's not like the North, was all about treating black people with equality, and still isn't. And you know what? We'll sit there and have this debate about whether waving a rebel flag, which is clearly a racist symbol, is is a right for free speech. I mean, there's so much conflict in this conversation, and there's so many ways that the response to a peaceful demonstration, a negative response to a peaceful demonstration, is wrong. But obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the President of the United States response. He just made it okay to say "son of a bitch" on the radio, because they didn't say that before. I mean, it's not one of the 7 dirty words, but I listened to Tom Ashbrook on Point Radio on NPR today, and he said, "Look, I've got to say it." The president said, "I've got to use the language he used," and so what did Trump say? He says, wouldn't it be great if the NFL owners if they had somebody taking a knee during the national anthem, that they'd fire the son of a bitch, that they drag the son of a bitch off the field and fire him. I mean, that's what the president of the United States is using, that kind of language. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, it is unprecedented. Unprecedented. I always talk about the bar being lowered, and it is getting lowered every single day. Every day, Donald Trump says something not just more outrageous, but just more uncalled for. I mean, and oftentimes they're racist comments. I mean, his comments at the UN. I mean, calling to destroy. I mean, the UN is a place of peace. He goes there and says, "We're going to have no choice but destroy a country of 25 million people."
Refers him to Rocket Man.
Yeah, frankly, I think Kim Jong-un's nickname for Donald Trump is sticking. Calling him a dotard or a dotard, depending on how you want to pronounce it, a dotard. In fact, if you notice, dotard, there's only 2 letters different than Donald, so I've been referring to him as Dotard J. Trump. It's just take it's a couple letters off. So, but I don't know. I think that sticks because he is kind of an old, feeble guy who does stupid things. I mean, and this is an example. Look, if Donald Trump really wanted to somehow address the fact that athletes have been taking a knee during the national anthem to protest social injustice, if he really wanted to, one of the things he could have done was maybe address the social injustice. Maybe he could have addressed, instead he's pulling back any of the stuff that Obama had in place to offer more scrutiny and better training for police officers, and more oversight over police departments to see if they have chronic racism or systemic racism. He and Jeff Sessions are getting rid of all that. So he's actually moving the mark the opposite way. And then weighs in, and then he tries to say, "Oh, this isn't about racism." Well, who the hell was he talking about then? Who's taking a knee at these games? I mean, yeah, there's a white guy, but these are black athletes. And you know what? These black athletes are powerful. I'm not saying they're powerful because they're football players. They're powerful because they represent 75% of the players in the league. Tonight we talked about it, Robbie, before the show. The Dallas Cowboys are playing tonight. And
Jerry changing tradition, and they were supposed to be airing the national anthem, which I don't think they've ever done.
Well, and the thing is, Jerry Jones has been one of the strongest opponents to these protests. But I dare and challenge the black players on the Dallas Cowboys team to take a knee. What's he going to do? Is he going to fire you? Really? I mean, Dallas Cowboy, I'm not a big fan of the team, but they're competitive. I dare Jerry Jones to fire half a dozen or a dozen black players for taking a knee. Yeah, you go ahead. See what happens to your brand. And Donald Trump, him weighing in, believing that somehow he was going to have positive influence. There has never been this many players taking a knee. I mean, over 200 players took a knee in this past weekend. Over 200 players. Last year, it was Colin Kaepernick and about 2 or 3 others. And, of course, Colin Kaepernick does not get signed by a team this year. He's better than half of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL today. The starting quarterbacks. And keep in mind, they have second string and third string. So out of 32 teams, he's better than 70 of the quarterbacks that are signed to the NFL. He's better than them. And I'm not just saying that, making that up. That's not just my opinion. That's based on stats. His quarterback ratings are higher than half of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, the Miami Dolphins picked up an old man, Jay Cutler, out of retirement from Chicago, and then lost to what was, by many accounts, the worst team in the NFL, the New York Jets, this weekend. No, I didn't watch the game. I'm boycotting the NFL, but I did see the scores. But I mean, look, there are any number of teams that certainly could use Colin Kaepernick certainly as a backup, but they won't sign him because, again, because of this, because he protests, because he had the nerve to stand up as a black athlete and say, no, I'm not going to I'm not going to stand for the national anthem as long as this nation is not being fair to black people. I mean, it's a simple protest. And again, no vulgarity, no lewd gestures, no flipping people off. I mean, in the beginning, he just sat. I mean, I was one of the early ones, and I said it in my post here before the show. This was kind of going on during the Standing Rock thing, and I couldn't help but see the parallels between Colin Kaepernick's protest and the overt racism that was occurring in Standing Rock. So I said, yeah, I stand with Standing Rock, but I sit with Colin Kaepernick. And then, of course, then it turned into kneeling with Colin Kaepernick. And I posted today, I said, look, if you claimed to be standing with Standing Rock and yet reject the notion of kneeling with Kaepernick, then you're a hypocrite. And I mean that because, look, Standing Rock wasn't just about a pipeline. It was about racism. I had our buddy Mike posted it today. I heard a new term, environmental racism. What are your thoughts? And I said, well, Standing Rock is environmental racism. And well, how so? Well, because they rerouted that pipeline away from white people up in Bismarck and routed it right by Native people. That's
minority.
Exactly.
Population.
The sacrifice, what they call the sacrifice zones, right? I mean, that is environmental racism. When you are prepared to jeopardize the environment around a marginalized people so you can protect your white people, that there's no better example. Of course, we've got West Valley storage facility up here 30 miles upstream, the Cattaraugus Creek, the Kinzua Dam. That's environmental racism. Building a dam to protect Pittsburgh and flood out 10,000 acres of Seneca land in the process. I mean, we got all kinds of examples of this stuff. But clearly, Standing Rock, not just the idea of the environmental racism, but then, this is one of the things that bothered me about not Black Lives Matter, but the coverage of Black Lives Matter, is that every time a news channel would talk about the violence, even when they would cover police departments that were abusing the use of force, they would never talk about Standing Rock. They wouldn't put it in the same. They were always talking about urban police forces, the idea of militarized police forces. They'd cite all these city police forces and all of their APVs and everything else, but they would still never talk about a rural police force like the Morton County Sheriffs, the State Police of North Dakota, the National Guard that played a role in there. I mean, to me, there was no greater example of the abuse of force. Sure, they weren't killing anybody. I mean, they didn't kill anybody. They seriously injured a few people. That poor girl from New York, that white girl who got that concussion grenade thrown at her or shot at her and almost blew her arm off. Yeah, that was pretty serious stuff. But just because they didn't kill anybody doesn't mean that's not an abuse of force and the use of force. I mean, look, even before the police were doing it, the hired, contractors by Energy Transfer came in there with dogs. The only reason that even got any media attention was because Amy Goodman with Democracy Now! Happened to be there, along with Unicorn Riot and some of the folks on social media. But again, that's the racism that Native people feel. So if you were suggesting that you were standing with Standing Rock, but then somehow felt offended because Colin Kaepernick was taking a knee, then I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're just a hypocrite. And so again, I was one of the folks that was saying that. In fact, it was interesting because I went to an event down at Burning Books, which is my friends have a bookstore in Buffalo. And a guy shows up, pulls up in a car, and he's got a sign in the window that says, "I'm standing with Standing Rock, but I'm sitting with Kaepernick." I'm like, hey, that's awesome. Somebody else is doing that. But, this is it. We have to understand that racism has to be fought against. I mean, and when it comes to the NFL, I'm sorry, but it's not enough to just condemn through taking a knee this injustice. I'm sorry, but man, players, you guys got to speak out more about things like mascots, the Washington football team, the Kansas City football team. I mean, that's still racism, and I think it has to be addressed. And I'm not asking you to change your message or anything else, but I'm just saying you got to have that in the backs of your mind. But I got to tell you, I got to get back to just this past weekend. One of the most powerful images I have in mind, and I didn't actually see it, I just heard about it, and I heard them talking about it on the radio, was the black man who sang the national anthem at the Detroit Lions football game. He sings the national anthem, and when he gets down to the last couple of lines, he takes a knee and throws his fist up in the air. And I'm thinking, man, I want to see the picture of that. I want to post that. Somebody please post that on my wall. Let's post a picture of the black man who sang the national anthem, and give me his name. Let's put it out there. He not only sang the national anthem, and I'm sure there were a whole lot of white people thinking, look at that, a black man singing the national anthem. And then he drops to a knee and throws his fist up in the air. Man, that's just a great image. I mean, that tickled me to death. And and I got to give props to all of the team owners, including the Bills. They're the local team, but so many of the team owners that came out, even the owner of the New England Patriots, the Kraft, he even came out and condemned
Trump.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of these guys did. Rex Ryan, who was like one of a real Trumper, right? He was thrilled to death to introduce him at a rally here in Buffalo. Rex Ryan, former Bills coach, he condemned Trump. And again, most people refer to his comments as disgusting, uncalled for. There were veterans, there were all kinds of people, but all these team owners, I think all but about 8 or 9 team owners had a written response calling out, deriding Trump for referring to anybody taking the knee as a son of a bitch. I mean, it's just bizarre. 3 or 4 teams, I think that they and I'm not even sure that that was the best response, but they felt we're going to avoid the conflict altogether and knock them out. And of course, I think Pittsburgh was going to do that, and then one guy comes out, and of course, oh, look at this one guy, he's a hero. And then listening to football fans. I mean, there was even this one concessions guy at the Bills game who got all kinds of, his 15 minutes of fame because he took, after the national anthem, he took off his uniform and quit his job. Good. Somebody else can have that job because you obviously didn't need it. It was a second job for him anyway. But, I mean, give me a freaking break. I posted a meme that I copied off of our buddy Art John's profile and his news feed, and it shows 2 guys sitting on a couch with beer in front of them, and it says, "This is you during the national anthem at home," and then it shows a picture of Captain America with flags, everything else, and this is you on social media pretending to be the champion of patriotism. I mean, come on. Which one of you show me one person who, when the national anthem comes on at home, stands up, takes their hat off, and lays their hell? You'd be lucky to put your chicken wing, your slice of pizza, or your beer down. You probably got your hands filled with all 3 of them.
I was wondering the same thing about the people that are in line concessions. How many of them put their things down, put their beer down, or whatever they have?
Yeah, the concession guys take off their little paper hats. Come on, give me a freaking break. And there are radio stations that play the national anthem every noon and every midnight, and how many people pull over to the side of the road so they can, salute the flag? Come on, give me a break. I mean, it is so absurd. And look, all of the conversation that suggests that that taking a knee or sitting during the national anthem is somehow disrespecting troops, it has nothing to do with troops. Although I will say that the national anthem is a poem that was written during the War of 1812, War of 1812, and it's a violent song, and we'll talk about that violence before the show is over. But you know what? Shame on the United States if they really want to connect war and military and soldiers with their national anthem. That's the best you have to offer. I mean, you guys got other silly little songs like "America the Beautiful" and "God Bless America." I mean, all these other. I mean, you couldn't come up with a better song than that.
I wonder how outdated that is. If it was made in 1800s, how many things have changed in the context of what it meant
Well,
there's so much of it.
okay. I mean, we got a few minutes before the bottom of the hour. Let's talk about context, because I gotta, one of the things that is rarely spoken about, and I'm not saying that this is the basis of the debate, but I gotta mention it. The third verse. The third verse is about as racist a verse in any song, let alone the song that has been declared the national anthem. So this is the third verse of the Star Spangled Banner, and I'm not going to sing it for you because, well,
I'm not going to stand if you did.
Yeah, you're not going to stand. Okay, so here it is. This is the third verse. And where is that band who so vauntingly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country should leave us no more? Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps' pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or gloom of the grave. And the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph doth wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. I mean, they literally still say the land of the free when they're talking about a slave's footsteps being washed away with their blood. Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps. And they flat out say, any of you who are, when hireling, they mean indentured servants, basically. No refuge could save the hireling and slave. That's the national anthem. I think based on that alone, if I'm a black man, and look, and we'll talk about us as Native people and our relationship to these words. This song is a racist song. And not only was Francis Scott Key a staunch advocate for slavery, a slave owner himself, and obviously many of the founding fathers of the United States were large slave owners, including Jefferson and Washington, Adams, all of these guys. They were all slave owners at some level. In fact, guys like Jefferson, had sex with his slaves, bore children. And his children, you know what they were? Slaves. Yeah, they were house slaves, but they were slaves nonetheless. I mean, this is the American history. So you're right. When you ask a question about something being outdated, look, I know they don't sing this third verse. I wish somebody would, though. Jake and I were talking about it before the show. Wouldn't it be great? I want somebody to record that third verse. I'd love to hear that, and because I think people need to know what it is. And I'll go beyond the national anthem. Let's talk about the flag. That flag, the red, white, and blue, stars and stripes, is not a symbol of freedom. You can say that it is, but you know what it's a symbol of? It's a symbol of colonialism. You know how I know? Because the 13 flags, or the 13 bars, stripes, represents the 13 colonies. By definition, it's colonialism. And the stars represents the states, right? The current states, many of which are illegal. I mean, and I'm not just talking about Hawaii, which was an illegal occupation altogether. But think about a state like Oklahoma, which was supposed to be native territory, and it was clearly delineated for that. How did that become a state? How did any of those states in the so-called Louisiana Purchase become states of the United States? You know how? Because they claimed to have bought it from the French, who got it from the Spanish, who got it from church, apparently. They got it from church. They got it from the doctrine of Christian discovery. Because this was what colonialism was all about. And the United States didn't stop with the West Coast. They went into Hawaii. Then they would go into the Philippines. They go to Cuba. They go to Puerto Rico. And just really lay waste to many of these territories. Look, we're at the bottom of the hour, so we'll take a break. We'll come back. And I got to tell you, we ain't done yet. We ain't done yet. We'll go out with some Pretty Little Liars.
night, another day tries to forget. You just can't forget. These pretty little liars, he won't show number. These pretty little liars, he won't show gold. Pretty little liar, he won't show diamonds. And these pretty little liars, he won't show. He won't show. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. He falls asleep. He never sleeps alone. Every night, another filthy regret. And every night, another chance to forget. Just can't forget. Pretty little liars, he won't show number. And these pretty little liars, he won't show gold. Pretty little liar, he won't show diamonds. And these pretty little liars, he won't show soon. He won't show soon. Won't you so? Won't you go? Won't you so? Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, oh, oh.
All right, thanks for coming back. That's a little bit of Logan Stats and Pretty Little Liars. I think since we've got a lot of lies and mistruths being spoken as of late, I think it's probably justified to go ahead and play some liar songs. So that's first we had Little White Lies by Pappy John's band, and then Pretty Little Lies from Logan Stats. So hey, I want to give props out to my sponsors. I want to thank Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses, Eric White and ERW Enterprises, good friends like Ed Schindler and Tracy Brown and Cynthia Trice, Scott Snyder, Neville Spring, Sugar Montour. And I want to thank those who have helped in the past, because that's how we got here today. We used to have a lot more expense associated with this show when we were on commercial radio. We had to pay for our airtime, and without those who had sponsored and put up ads and that kind of thing, we wouldn't be into our 8th year the way we are today. So I want to thank all of you for even the ones who no longer support, who did support. And of course, I can't say enough about those who continue to help us not only do this show, but they help me fund my trips to New York, where I do Let's Talk with John Kane on WBAI in New York City. That's Thursdays from 10 till noon. I encourage people to check out that show. That's kind of a neat show because there I'm talking to the New York City market. It is a talkback show, so we take phone calls and we hear from an amazingly diverse audience that calls in. You know, people from all over, not just the 5 boroughs, but beyond. And of course, if you listen to the show online and you go to www.wbai.org and listen to the stream, or catch us on Facebook, because we do the Facebook live stream of that show as well. Shawnee Rice and I host the program. You can add your comments. You can actually call into the station from wherever. So I think it'd be cool to get a couple of calls from back home to our New York show. So I encourage you to do so. I also want to thank Unity Stream and Apache Radio Net for providing our streaming, and I also want to give special thanks to CKWE for both the simulcast and the rebroadcast. As well as thanking Netroots Radio, Real People's Media, and Indigenous Resistance Radio for carrying Let's Talk Native on their networks. And I also want to thank all of you who share the show, who share our videos, who share our SoundCloud audios. Any of you who do that, I thank you, and I encourage you, more of you to do it. I mean, that's the way we spread the conversation. That's how we get more of a conversation going on some of these very important issues. Obviously, I've spent a great deal of time talking about the conflict the Senecas are currently engaged in with New York State over revenue sharing. The fact of the matter is the Senecas read their compact by the letter and know that it ended in 14 years, which was last December, and the state is crying foul. And so I've been doing some videos, and I appreciate the feedback that I've gotten on those videos, and I post them. It's on our YouTube channel. That's the first place that we put these up. We put them on our Let's Talk Native TV YouTube channel. So I encourage you to look for those. I post them on my group pages and on Twitter. And so you can catch the videos, but I encourage you to share them the same as I did. Put them back in your Twitter network. Put them back in your Facebook network. I think these are the conversations, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. My point is, then at least have the conversation. I would love some folks to challenge me on some of this stuff. I mean, if they think I got something wrong, whether I'm talking about Colin Kaepernick or I'm talking about Paul Deister, which, by the way, I've got a great new video. I actually released the video today, but the audio quality wasn't great, so we reshot it and we'll replace that. I'll re-release the video. It's called my Paul Deister addiction video because clearly Paul Deister has an addiction problem. He's addicted to gaming revenue. So it's a great video. It's about 8 minutes long, so it's not too. You don't have to invest a great deal of time, but I encourage you to check it out. I encourage you to share it, and I think this is where education comes from, because if you don't hear the facts of the the stuff we're talking about here about this, about taking a knee during the national anthem, or whether we're talking about any number of subjects that we talk about here. Look, if you don't like what you hear, then look it up and challenge it. Challenge what I'm saying, and call me out on it. I mean, post something. I mean, give me some feedback that you think I'm, somehow spouting something that's not true. And because I encourage, people to do their own investigation. Don't take my word for it. And you know what? Don't take Donald Trump's word for it. Don't take Fox News word for it. I mean, you gotta, folks, you gotta discern this stuff. You have to apply some critical thinking to some of the stuff that's out there. Look, getting back on this Kaepernick protest, which is now turned into a wholesale NFL-wide protest. I think it's important that people understand a few things. First off, let me back up. The singer in Detroit, his name was Rico Lavalla. Rico Lavalla. That was the name of the singer. So my hat's off to that gentleman for not only belting out a song that's not necessarily pleasant to sing, but belting out a song and then doing the right thing by taking a knee and throwing a fist up. But I want to talk about this thing because some people have this impression that these NFL players are breaking some sort of written contractual rule, and there isn't one. There's nothing in the NFL handbook that says that a player must stand for the national anthem. I mean, there are certain limitations. They've got to wear equipment and uniforms that are approved, and there's certain things they can't do, especially during the course of the game. There's certain displays, and obviously there's even penalties for too much celebration and that kind of stuff. So there's certain things that the players can't do, and they have rules that say that. But there is no rule in the NFL that says that a player must stand during the national anthem. In fact, and this might be something that comes as a surprise to some people, they've only been on the field for the national anthem since 2009. I knew that it was recent. I thought maybe it's only been about 10 years. I looked it up, 2009. 2009 is when they started, when essentially all the teams started having the players out on the field. You know why? Again, money. The military, both the I don't know if it's just the armed services and including the National Guard started sponsoring the NFL. Did you ever notice that all of a sudden they were doing flybys with jets and bombers and all, they'd even have a paratrooper come sailing into a stadium. All of this was to mix politics with football. Ooh, what a shock, right? All of this was about mixing military service with football. There's no connection between military and football, but they did it, and they sponsored the NFL. And from what I understand, they've put up over $20 million, and I don't know if that's just since 2009, but lots of money. Part of the Pentagon's budget is going to the military sponsoring the NFL. And so part of their sponsorship, they asked that the players come out and somehow look like they are supporting the connection between the military and football. Yeah, so this wasn't about patriotism. This was about money. Again, prior to 2009, I heard somebody say, who's the guy who used to be the Rooney, the owner of the Steelers? Art Rooney, right? They said, "Oh, Art Rooney would be rolling over in his grave if he saw what was happening." That's not just BS. Art Rooney didn't have his players on the field when he was owning and running the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, so this is the lies. These are these pretty little lies, these little white lies that are being spouted off about all this stuff. It's just simply not true. But and again, I want to talk a little bit about the native side to this thing, because we too have issues with police violence. In most demographics, on a proportional or per capita basis, Native people are killed by cops at a higher rate than black people. Of course, it's a significantly smaller number in terms of total, because we are a significantly smaller population. We represent less than 1% of the U.S. population, something like 0.7% of a percent, where black people represent somewhere between 12 and 15. But you know what? White people are killed by cops in total number. There are many more white people killed by cops than black people. It's just that it's a much lower percentage. So black people are a much higher percentage per. I saw the stats. It was something like per million people. White people it's like 3, and for black people it's almost double. It's like 6.9, almost 7. But for Native people, it's like 12, over 12. So out of a million Native people, 12 will end up being shot by a police officer. I mean, this police violence thing, and that's not even counting the people who aren't killed, but who are just abused. We have this, what do they call it? The Starlight Tours, where cops were taking Native people and in places like North Dakota, sub-zero weather, taking them out, throwing them in the back of a car and driving them off the reservation miles away, so they have to walk home in freezing weather.
I wonder how much worse it was before this technology with Facebook and everybody going live and showing all these things and their videos they can shoot when they have their phones.
Oh, and that's absolutely true. I mean, because there's no question. Again, we can talk about Standing Rock, but in general, you think about all of these issues, like the guy who shot Eric Garner being choked to death. If there wasn't somebody with a cell phone video and then posting it on social media, we wouldn't know half of these things. And this is the part that is so disturbing, that even when you have the video, even when you have somebody dying at the hands of a police officer, they still don't get convicted. They don't even get, it's not even about convictions. They don't even get punished. The NYPD paid Eric Garner's family millions of dollars in a settlement. Millions of dollars. But the cop who killed him, no problems. In fact, he's getting paid more today than he was when he did it a few years ago. When he killed, and how did he kill him? He choked him to death using a physical maneuver that has been banned by the police department. He choked him. The chokehold, the way he grabbed him around the throat, that is actually a prohibited use of force. It's prohibited. So even even using a maneuver that is prohibited by the police force, he still suffered no consequences for killing a human being, for choking the life out of a human being. I mean, that's what's so incredible about all this, and we've seen it. I mean, we've seen this in Native territories. We see it all the time. We have a thing called missing and murdered Indigenous women. Many of those women are missing and murdered at the hands of policemen. There was a whole big story about this on the Canadian side up near in Quebec, where some of these women have been raped, kidnapped, held by police officers. And of course, most of the missing and murdered Indigenous women issues has more to do with the lack of attention that the police departments give to these issues, not the direct involvement. But in a way, you still got to attribute some of this stuff to law enforcement because law enforcement doesn't care. So, yeah, we have a problem. But if we back this up even farther, I mean, Robbie, we haven't been standing for the national anthem for many, many years, and it's not because of Black Lives Matter. And it's not even because of our attempt to somehow slander patriotism. It's just that it's not ours. That flag is not ours. That anthem is not ours. And I find it particularly disturbing now that lacrosse has become such a prominent sport, and not just a professional sport, but college sport, high school sport. When I go to a professional lacrosse game and I see the national anthem of Canada and the United States played, and then here in Buffalo, what's the deal with the bagpipes and the Scottish guy in the kilt? I mean, they got a guy who, they shut the lights down and guys starts blowing in bagpipes and they put a spotlight on him and he walks down the stairs. I have no clue. Robbie, explain that one to me, please.
I have no idea. I had that discussion with my nephew last year, because I hadn't been to a game in a long time, and I was trying to correlate anything that has to do with that to lacrosse, and I drew a blank because he asked me, he goes, what does that have to do with lacrosse? And I was like,
I mean, no honor song, no longhouse, song of any kind, no, nothing. I mean, no hand drum, nothing that would connect the sport, which whose founders are Native, to any of the ceremony that goes on before that. And instead, Canada and the United States get their national anthem played, and then for whatever reason, a guy in a kilt comes down with bagpipes. I mean, yeah. So as Native people, it's not so much that to hate the flag or to hate the anthem. It's not ours. We do have issues. Like I said, there's no denying that the stars and stripes of the American flag represent colonialism. And there's no question that the national anthem has a racist verse in it. But the biggest thing, and I listened to, there's this woman on Fox News. I don't watch Fox News, but I saw it posted on Facebook, so I had to watch it. And she used to be a judge, I guess, and they call her Judge Pirro. And she weighed in on this whole thing, and she was actually condemning somebody like Colin Kaepernick, saying that he has undue influence over an 8-year-old football fan because of him taking a knee. That what he's doing is somehow unfair. It's taking advantage of a young mind and using his influence as a player. I'm like, wait a second here. You're teaching 4-year-olds in pre-K to pledge allegiance to a flag. And let's stop and think how creepy that is. A whole classroom full of kids mouthing words that they have no idea what they mean. They can't know what it means. Most adults don't even know half of those things. One nation, indivisible. Most people probably think it's invisible, not indivisible. They don't even know, probably not even saying the words right. I mean, so you're indoctrinating 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. I remember when I was a kid, and of course I'm older than you guys, but when I was a kid in school, you actually had to memorize the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem and get graded on it. I mean, it was like kindergarten. It was a pass or fail thing. I mean, and it was on your report card. I mean, if you couldn't do that, so this was a requirement. Now, look, it's been a lot of years since there's been court decisions that have upheld the right of a student not to give to do the Pledge of Allegiance. But ironically, in some places, and I've heard this, and maybe even here locally in some of the schools, where they've told a student, if you don't want to pledge allegiance to the flag, we need a note from your parents. What? A note from your parents? I mean, at what point do you these are students in school. They don't have a right to decide whether they should be a part of this indoctrination. So I'm listening to this judge, talk about what Colin Kaepernick is doing to an 8-year-old, and I'm thinking, Look at the educational system. This is that systemic racism. Because if you're making every child, regardless of their history, their ancestry, not just say words, but think about what a pledge is. It's like a verbal contract. You're saying, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. No, I don't. I don't. I don't pledge allegiance to that flag or to the United States. I mean, I'm Native. I'm Mohawk. Why would I pledge allegiance to a country that has oppressed my people, that has committed genocide against my people, that built its national wealth on the backs of slavery, stolen lands, and resources? No, I'm sorry. Look, this is just the facts of the matter. I don't walk around angry at the world. I don't hate Americans. I don't even hate politicians, but I don't agree with them. And I don't agree with American policy. So I speak out against American policy. And you know what? It isn't my First Amendment right to do that. It's my right. It's my birthright. The United States didn't give me the right to speak, and no soldiers fought for my right to speak. And in fact, I mean, if you want to look at what soldiers have been used for in the United States, they have not. They've never fought for freedom. They've always fought to oppress people. I mean, whether they thought those people were, needed to be oppressed or not. So when you're talking about Teddy Roosevelt going into the Philippines, they weren't fighting for freedom in the Philippines. They were fighting against Filipinos fighting for their independence. When they went into Cuba, to help with Cuban independence, they were shocked when they says, wait a second, Cubans are black? literally, when Roosevelt's people, including who's the publisher, the newspaper, William Randolph Hearst. William Randolph Hearst was a big advocate of imperialism. When he finally sent a reporter out to Cuba and realized that they were black people, ooh, wait a second. We can't fight for an independent black nation. No, I mean, it's absurd. This is how embedded the racism is in the United States. And I mean, it really is absurd. All right, let me check my notes. What have I left out of here? So, again, I think it's really important that people realize that this is a new phenomenon. And that these players are not, because that's what I hear all the time. Oh, you can't, if you go to work for somebody, you can't use your platform at work to advance your political agenda. That's a lot of crap. There are all kinds of places. I mean, that use their platform. You mentioned Jim Kelly. Look, if you live in Buffalo, you at some point in your life you were a Jim Kelly fan. But when Jim Kelly comes out and says, "Oh no, it's wrong for these players to use football to advance a cause." Well, wait a second. What was Hunter's hope? Look, it's a terrible thing that Jim Kelly's child was sick. And nobody thought it was wrong for him to use his football career or the NFL or any other or any platform to advance a cause. Now, that was a just cause. But you know what? So is social injustice a just cause. So shame on Jim Kelly. And shame on any of these athletes. Charles Barkley, George Foreman, any of these guys. I mean, that was the other thing interesting. Did you see how many players kind of switched? What was that, LeSean McCoy?
Yeah.
I mean, he was condemning Kaepernick only a few weeks ago. Once Donald Trump calls them all, sons of bitches, all of a sudden, he got right.
He took it a little different than others. Like he didn't just take a knee. He stretched and he went through like a little bit of a routine during the anthem,
which might even be more of a distraction, actually. But and there's certainly nothing wrong with that, I guess. But here's the other thing that people say. People say that who are these rich players to protest? I mean, because they're wealthy, because they've made some success out of their lives, and they had to dedicate a lot of their lives to becoming the athletes that they are. They didn't just luck into this. But when I hear people say, these spoiled football players are just protesting, look, they're sacrificing. There's risk involved. I mean, look at Muhammad Ali, who who sacrificed not only his heavyweight title as a boxer, but his prime boxing years protesting the Vietnam War. So when you think about that, or Colin Kaepernick, who's now sidelined because the NFL essentially blackballed him, it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Now that the NFL was forced to respond to the racist comments coming out of Donald Trump, it's going to be interesting to see if any of these players rethink, the possibility of signing Kaepernick. I think it does create an interesting, possibility. Look, and when people say, well, if Kaepernick wanted to do something, why doesn't he take some positive action? He has. He put together $1 million commitment, which is up to now like $900,000, to donate to all kinds of causes, including, by the way, the health center at Standing Rock. I don't know if you knew that was one of the things.
I seen that today in a post where he donated money.
Yeah, he donated money to the Standing Rock Health Clinic. He is up to, and where does this money come from? Well, in case you didn't know, the number 7 49ers jersey with Kaepernick's name on the back of it is one of the best-selling jerseys in the NFL still today. And it's not the number one, but it's one of the top-selling New Jersey or top-selling jerseys in the NFL. And it's been the proceeds from that and other places that he's generated revenue. Yes, this isn't a guy who's desperate for work. I mean, he wants to play football because he's a football player. I mean, that's why he wanted to play football. I mean, it's what he does. But it's not like he's starving himself to death or anything. I mean, this is a guy who's still in perfect health, in perfect shape, keeps himself in. He's ready to play at any given time. And like I said, it'd be interesting to see what happens. But I think people should know that Cap has put his money where his mouth is. And if you want to find out more, go to Kaepernick, and that's KAEPERNICK .com. Kaepernick7.com. Go there and you can see what he's donated, what he's donated to, the funds. It's all fully accountable. It's all right there for people to inspect and see for themselves. But anybody who says that he is somehow spoiled, I mean, you want to take a look at a guy who was basically cheated every claim he's ever made to donate. It's Donald Trump. This is a guy who has used foundation money, between him and his kids have used it for personal gain. They pledged all kinds of donations, including to veterans, and then turned out they didn't do it. Kaepernick's doing it. He's putting money not only domestically, but even in African nations. He's flown aid. He actually got some folks who, I mean, it's not just his money. Right now, he's got other people who stepped up with him to help do some of what he needs to do, what he wants to do to help people. So, I mean, look, this guy is a class act in almost every way. And when I hear people say, "Oh, yeah, but he was raised by white people. He lived in the suburbs. He's got no room to talk." No, he's got lots of room to talk. And in fact, I hope that these black athletes and hopefully some white athletes too, but people, athletes of color, realize the power that they have. Like I said, I challenge the players on the Dallas Cowboys team. Make Jerry Jones eat his words. I love to see that. Grow up here, for crying out loud. I mean, don't just sit there and submit. Because when I hear people say, "Why don't these guys just shut up and play football?" I don't think anybody can even come close to understanding how much bigotry is involved with telling a black man to shut up and entertain the white man. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying when those words are uttered. And I've seen it uttered over and over and over again. All right, folks. That pretty much wraps it up. I'm going to keep following the story, and we're going to keep talking about this issue just as we talk about many issues. And I encourage you to follow it, but I encourage you to have some thoughtful consideration to what's happening here. I just think you owe it to yourself, and frankly, you owe it to your country to try to make it better. That's what these guys are protesting. They want improvement. They aren't just talking about criticism. Thanks. We'll be back soon.